The rain wasn't just falling, it was pounding, like the sky itself had a grudge against me. Each drop hit my skin like ice, seeping straight through the thin jacket I'd bought at a thrift store last year. The fabric clung to me, heavy, useless, plastered against my waitress uniform. Chicago in November was cruel, but tonight it felt personal. My sneakers squished with every step, water pooling inside until it sloshed between my toes. My shift had ended 2 hours late, and the last bus home had already hissed away into the night. That meant a 3-mile walk through half-lit streets, carrying the weight of exhaustion and the bitter truth that my tips tonight wouldn't even cover next week's groceries. The streetlights blurred into glowing halos through the curtain of rain. My hair, once carefully pulled back for work, now stuck in messy strands across my face. My lips trembled not just from the cold, but from the hopelessness that crept in when you've been fighting too long and the fight starts to feel endless. Keep moving, I told myself, my voice swallowed by the storm. A car sped by, throwing a wave of filthy water across my legs. I didn't even have the energy to curse. My body ached from 12 hours of carrying trays, smiling at strangers, and pretending I wasn't dying inside. My hands still smelled faintly of marinara sauce and bleach. That's when I noticed the headlights behind me to slow, too deliberate. The vehicle didn't roar past like the others. It glided, black, sleek, predatory. It purred beside me with the patience of a hunter watching prey stumble in the dark. The tinted window slid down with mechanical precision. "Miss." The voice was deep, smooth, accented Italian maybe, or something European that turned every syllable into silt. "You'll freeze walking in this storm. Allow me to offer you a ride." I kept my head down, water dripping from my lashes, my instincts screaming louder than the thunder. "Don't talk, don't stop, keep walking." "I don't accept rides from strangers," I muttered, just loud enough to hear myself over the rain. My mother's voice echoed in my head from childhood. "Never get into a car you don't know." The stranger chuckled softly, a sound that slid down my spine in ways I couldn't explain. A wise rule. What rules exist to be broken? In certain storms. The car moved slowly to match my pace. I could feel his gaze, sharp even through the shadows of the back seat. Lightning split the sky, and for a fraction of a second, I caught a glimpse of him. Broad shoulders, an angular jaw traced with stubble, eyes that seemed to drink in light instead of reflecting it. A ring gleamed on his hand, gold, heavy, catching the flash of the storm. "You're shivering." My teeth chattered so violently I thought they might crack. He wasn't wrong. I hugged myself tighter, trying to keep moving. "Where are you headed?" he asked, voice smooth, unhurried. I should have kept quiet, but the rain had seeped into my bones, dragging common sense down with it. "Westfield Apartments," I blurted before I could stop myself. Immediately, regret tightened my throat. "Stupid. You don't tell a stranger where you live." "Ah," he said, like he already knew. My stomach twisted. Nobody ate like that unless they had information. "That's on my way." It wasn't. Not for anyone driving a car like his. Not for anyone whose suit probably cost more than my rent. Thunder rolled so loud it rattled the ground. My legs wobbled, my shoes squelched, and for the first time that night, the black car didn't seem like the greatest danger. The pneumonia he'd warned about felt closer. "Fine," I whispered, the word almost lost to the storm. "Thank you." The rear door opened silently. That's when I noticed the others, the driver with eyes locked on the road, another man in the passenger seat, both unmoving as statues. Neither looked at me. Their stillness was somehow worse than curiosity. I slid in, dragging puddles with me. The interior was warm, smelling of leather, tobacco, and something expensive I couldn't name. Classical music floated softly from hidden speakers, eerie in its calmness compared to the chaos outside. The man beside me shifted. Older than I'd first thought, early 40s maybe, but the kind of age that made him stronger, sharper, more dangerous. His suit was tailored so perfectly it looked like it had been sewn onto him. You're drenched, he observed, pressing a button. A partition rose between us and the men in the front, sealing us into a private bubble. He reached beneath the seat and pulled out a folded blanket, smooth and soft. Here, I hesitated. I'll ruin it. It can be replaced, he said, like money meant nothing. Like everything could be replaced except maybe me. I wrapped it around my shoulders, warmth rushing into frozen skin. My body shuddered with relief. What's your name? He asked, voice patient. Emily, I said after a pause. My voice sounded small, too fragile inside this world of power and velvet shadows. Emily Carter? He nodded as if approving of a decision I hadn't realized I'd made. You may call me Adrian. Not my name is. Not I'm Adrian. You may call me Adrian. My pulse quickened. Thank you, Adrian. The pleasure is mine. His eyes lingered on me, dark and unreadable, as if he were searching for something. The car moved faster now, sliding through streets with an efficiency that barely hummed. I realized, with a jolt of dread, that we weren't heading toward Westfield at all. The neon signs I knew, the cracked sidewalks of my neighborhood, they were slipping away behind us. This isn't the way, I said, panic bleeding into my voice. No, he agreed calmly. It's not. The air thickened between us. Turn around, I demanded, my voice rising despite my trembling. I need to go home. His gaze stayed on mine, unwavering. Home, he repeated, tasting the word like it didn't belong to me. An apartment with broken locks, paper-thin walls, and neighbors who wouldn't hear you scream. Is that what you want to return to tonight? My throat closed. He wasn't guessing. He knew. How do you? He raised a hand, silencing me. I have a better suggestion. The car turned, smooth as silk, through wrought iron gates I'd passed before but never seen open. They creaked shut behind us with a finality that made my stomach twist. What are you doing? My voice cracked. Offering you shelter from the storm, a warm meal, clothes that aren't soaked, rest. I never agreed. He leaned closer, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. You didn't refuse. Another shiver ran through me, not from the cold this time. The car circled a fountain lit from below, water sparkling against the storm. Ahead loomed a mansion of stone and columns, windows glowing golden against the black sky. It looked like it had been plucked from another century and dropped into Chicago. I swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed to run, to escape, to fight. But the gates had already closed. The car had already stopped. And Adrian Moretti's eyes were still fixed on me, patient, certain, as if I'd been expected all along. The door opened. Rain and wind rushed in, mixing with the warmth inside. Just until the storm passes, he said softly, a hint of something like amusement tugging at his lips. I hesitated, my hand frozen on the door handle. Was I stepping into safety? Or into the kind of danger you never escape? The storm followed me inside, clinging to my clothes, dripping from my hair, pooling on the marble floor. The doors shut behind me with a sound that didn't belong to wood. It was heavier, metallic, final, like a vault locking. I froze. The foyer stretched out in front of me like the lobby of some forgotten palace. A chandelier blazed above, crystals scattering fractured light across a ceiling painted with scenes I couldn't quite make out. My entire apartment could have fit inside this entrance hall, twice. Two men in suits appeared from nowhere, their footsteps muffled by the Persian rugs. One collected my soaked jacket without asking. The other handed me a towel I didn't remember reaching for. They moved like shadows, silent, efficient, practiced. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words died. You'll forgive the formality. Adrian's voice came from behind me. He had already shed his coat, and even without it, his presence filled the room. He gestured lazily toward the grand staircase, as though I were simply another guest at a polite dinner party, not a dripping waitress dragged in from the street. This house has traditions. My shoes squeaked against the floor as I shifted. I didn't agree to stay here. You agreed not to argue, he said smoothly, as if that were the same thing. You'll rest tonight. Tomorrow, if you still wish to return to your apartment, I'll arrange it. I wanted to argue again, to spit out that I didn't trust him, that everything about this screamed trap, but my body betrayed me. The warmth of the air, the soft towel in my hands, the way my soaked bones finally stopped aching, it all conspired against me. And then came the shiver. Not from cold this time, but from fever. My knees buckled slightly, enough that Adrian noticed. Mrs. Langston. The name was a command, and instantly, an older woman appeared at the top of the staircase. Her hair was silver, pulled tight into a bun. Her uniform was immaculate, starched edges, sharper than knives. She descended with the unhurried grace of someone who had lived in this house longer than anyone else. Yes, sir. Her voice was crisp, polite, clipped. Our guest needs accommodations. Guest. The word felt wrong, like calling a cage a sanctuary. Mrs. Langston's eyes swept over me, not unkind but not warm either. Assessing, measuring. I felt stripped bare beneath her gaze. This way, Miss Carter, she said, and turned without waiting for me to follow. I glanced back at Adrian, but he was already speaking in low tones with one of the suited men, his back partially turned, as if my decision no longer mattered. My legs carried me up the staircase after Mrs. Langston. Every step echoed faintly, and the walls seemed to watch me. Portraits of stern men and elegant women stared down from gilded frames, their painted eyes following me with unsettling familiarity. At the top of the stairs a hallway stretched long and silent. My reflection haunted the polished floors, pale and fragile compared to the luxury around me. Mrs. Langston opened a door and stepped aside. This will be your room. The word room didn't do it justice. It was a suite. A bed big enough for four stood draped in white silk, its carved frame gleaming with gold leaf. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens, their glass blurred with raindrops. A fireplace flickered quietly in the corner, casting shadows on walls lined with bookshelves. I stood frozen, towel clutched to my chest. This isn't necessary. Her expression didn't shift. Mr. Moretti insists. I didn't ask for. You'll find a nightgown prepared on the chair, she interrupted smoothly. Your shoes will be dried. A doctor has already been summoned. I blinked. A doctor? You're ill. She said it like a fact, not a possibility. It would be irresponsible not to treat it. Something inside me snapped. This is insane. You can't just decide things for me. I don't even know him. I don't know you. I don't know what this is. Mrs. Langston's eyes softened, barely, like the faintest crack in marble. I understand. It will make sense. In time? I hated the way she said it. As if she already knew what I would choose, what would happen, as if my future was a script she'd read years ago. I pressed my back against the wall, searching for breath. The heat of the fire seeped into me, weakening the anger, replacing it with exhaustion. My vision blurred for a second. You should rest, she said gently now. Arguing won't change anything tonight. And with that, she slipped out, the door clicking shut behind her. I ran to it immediately. The handle turned but only halfway. Locked. From the outside. My stomach dropped. I stumbled back to the bed and sat heavily. The silk blanket cooled beneath my trembling hands. The storm still rattled against the windows, but it wasn't as loud as the storm inside me. Guest? Prisoner? Which one was I? The fire popped softly, and I noticed the folded nightgown on the chair. Pale blue silk, delicate lace trimming. My name, Emily, embroidered on the collar in silver thread. My blood ran cold. I hadn't told anyone my full name. Not Mrs. Langston. Not the suited men. Only Adrian. I picked up the nightgown, fingers trembling. The fabric was soft as water against my skin. Too perfect. Too precise. Someone had planned this. My reflection in the mirror stared back at me, pale and damp, clutching a garment that didn't belong to me but had been waiting, as if it always had. A knock jolted me. Sharp, deliberate. Miss Carter. Mrs. Langston's voice, muted through the wood. The doctor will see you shortly. I opened my mouth to protest, but no sound came. Fever made my head swim. I dropped the gown back onto the chair and collapsed into the bed, the mattress swallowing me whole. The last thing I saw before my eyes closed was the embroidery, gleaming faintly in the firelight. Malaya's, if my name had been claimed by this house, stitched into its fabric long before I'd ever arrived. And just before sleep pulled me under, I thought I saw a shadow cross the window, too tall, too still to be a tree in the storm. Watching, I woke to the sound of murmurs. Low voices, not mine, not in my dream. For a split second, I thought I was still at the diner, co-workers gossiping near the coffee machine. But then velvet curtains came into focus, and a ceiling painted with constellations I didn't recognize. The air smelled of wood smoke and lavender polish, not burnt espresso and garlic bread. The voices belonged to two people, one male clipped and professional, the other female, polite but firm. She's running a fever, the man said. Exhaustion, most likely. Early signs of pneumonia. She'll need rest. She's stubborn, Mrs. Langston replied. I doubt she'll agree. The fog in my head lifted enough for me to realize I wasn't alone. My body tensed. I pushed myself upright, but the sudden movement made the room tilt. A glass of water wobbled on the bedside table, and I grabbed it before it spilled. My throat was raw, my voice a whisper. What? What's happening? The man turned toward me, middle-aged, clean-shaven, with a stethoscope slung around his neck like a badge. His suit wasn't a white coat, but it was just as authoritative. Miss Carter, he said, calm as if we were in his clinic and not a mansion where doors locked from the outside. You've been overworked, underfed, and exposed to the elements. Your body gave out. You need 3 days of bed rest. I clutched the blanket tighter around myself. 3 days. I can't. I'll lose my job. You'll lose more than that if you collapse again, he replied evenly. Lungs don't forgive carelessness. I didn't ask for you, I snapped, though my voice cracked. No, he said. But someone else did. My gaze flicked to Mrs. Langston. She didn't move, didn't flinch, just watched. You'll take the medicine, the doctor continued. Sleep, eat, and when you wake, you'll feel stronger. He placed 2 pills on the nightstand, beside a silver tray that hadn't been there before. A steaming bowl of broth, bread, butter. The kind of meal you'd give someone fragile. My stomach twisted not from hunger, but from suspicion. How do I know this isn't I? Stop myself. Poison. Saying it aloud would sound insane. The doctor's expression didn't change. If Mr. Moretti wanted you harmed, Miss Carter, you'd hardly be in silk sheets. Mrs. Langston's eyes narrowed slightly, warning him. The doctor packed his bag and left. The door clicked shut again. I turned on Mrs. Langston. Why am I here? What does he want from me? Her face was smooth marble. You're safe. That's all that matters. Safe. I laughed, bitter and broken. I'm locked in. My clothes are gone. A stranger knows my name, my address, probably what I had for lunch last week. That isn't safety. That's the door opened before I could finish, Adrian. He stepped inside as if the room belonged to him. Which, technically it did. But the way he moved made it clear the room wasn't mine either, no matter how many embroidered nightgowns he had waiting. Enough questions for tonight, he said smoothly, though his gaze never left mine. You need rest. I need answers. My voice shook, but I forced it steady. Why am I here? Why me? He stopped a few feet from the bed, hands clasped loosely behind his back. His presence was overwhelming, not because he was loud or threatening, but because he didn't need to be. Because you were walking alone in the rain, fever burning through your body, heading toward an apartment where you'd be invisible. Forgotten. Dead within a week, perhaps. I froze. He tilted his head slightly. Do you disagree? I wanted to? God, I wanted to. But he was right about the apartment, the broken locks, the neighbors who wouldn't care if I screamed. My silence must have been answer enough, because his mouth curved into something between a smile and a smirk. You see, he said softly, sometimes we know people before they know themselves. My skin prickled. What does that even mean? He stepped closer, slow and deliberate, like a predator testing the air before striking. It means, Emily Carter, that I know more about you than you think. My pulse hammered in my ears. Like what? That you work 2 jobs to keep afloat? That you still send money to your mother, even when it means you skip meals? That you graduated with honors, but the world didn't care? And that you've been waiting, whether you realize it or not, for someone to see you? I wanted to deny it, to call him a liar, but the way his words pierced through me left no room. My throat tightened. How do you know all that? Adrian didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled something out. A small box. He set it on the table beside the untouched broth and stepped back. What is that? My voice came out hoarse. Something that belongs to you, he said. I stared at the box, fear and curiosity warring in my chest. Open it. My hands shook as I reached for it, lifting the lid. Inside lay a bracelet, silver, delicate, studded with sapphires that caught the firelight. It looked ancient, expansive, impossibly out of place against my trembling fingers. The clasp bore an engraving, letters worn but legible. Carteria. I froze. My name, almost. I looked up sharply. What is this? Adrian's eyes darkened, a flicker of something old and dangerous in them. Your inheritance. The words settled heavy between us, heavier than the locked doors, heavier than the storm still raging outside. My mouth went dry. I don't understand. You will, he said, voice low, final. But not tonight. He turned, moving toward the door. Wait, my voice cracked. You can't just. He paused, hand on the handle, his silhouette sharp against the glow of the fire. I can, he said softly, and I will. The lock clicked as he left, leaving me with the bracelet burning in my palm like a secret I didn't want but couldn't let go. I didn't sleep. The fever had burned itself out, leaving behind a hollow ache in my bones and a mind that refused to quiet. I turned the bracelet over and over in my hand, the sapphires catching the firelight, the engraved name haunting me. Carter. So close to mine. Close enough that it couldn't be coincidence. By dawn, I had convinced myself I would get answers or die trying. The lock clicked just as the first pale light spilled through the curtains. My body tensed. The door opened, and Mrs. Langston stepped inside, balancing a tray. Breakfast, she said simply, setting it on the table near the window. I don't want food, I snapped. I want out. Her expression didn't shift. Mr. Moretti will see you in the solarium after you've eaten. And if I refuse? Then he'll still see you, she replied, her tone calm but immovable. The door clicked behind her as she left. My fists clenched. The room, for all its silk and firelight, felt smaller with every breath, like the walls themselves were leaning closer. When the knock came again, an hour later, it wasn't Mrs. Langston, it was him. Adrian Moretti stepped inside, dressed in a charcoal suit that seemed to drink in the morning light. His presence filled the space as naturally as the fire had the night before. You look stronger, he said, his gaze assessing. You're going to explain. I held up the bracelet, my voice trembling with both fear and defiance. What is this? Why does it have my name on it? His lips curved faintly, as though he'd been waiting for me to ask. Not your name, he corrected softly. Your real name. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? My name is Emily Carter. Carter, he repeated, tasting the syllables like they were sour. Then he reached into his jacket and withdrew something thin and worn, a photograph. He held it out to me. I hesitated, then snatched it from his hand. The edges were frayed, the colors faded, but the faces were unmistakable. A man tall, dark-haired, with the same stubborn chin I saw in my own reflection. His arms slung casually around a younger Adrian, both of them standing in front of a nightclub, neon lights blurring behind them. The man was smiling, carefree, alive. My breath caught. That's my father, I whispered. Adrian's gaze never left mine. James Carter? No? I shot back, heat rising to my face. His name was James Carter. He left when I was 5. I haven't seen him since. Because he chose to leave, Adrian said evenly. Chose to cut the E from his name and the ties that came with it. But names, Miss Carter, are not so easily erased. The photograph shook in my hands. You're lying. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over me. Am I? I stared at the picture, at my father's face beside his, a version of him I had never known. Harder, sharper, alive in a world I couldn't comprehend. My chest tightened. Why are you showing me this? Because your father owed me a debt, Adrian said quietly. One he died before he could repay. The word debt lodged like a stone in my throat. What kind of debt? The kind that doesn't disappear when a man runs, he replied, his eyes darkening. The kind that falls to blood. I shook my head violently. No. Whatever he did, that's his problem, not mine. Blood doesn't ask permission, Adrian said. His tone wasn't cruel, but it was merciless. It demands. My hands trembled. This is insane. I'm not part of your world. I serve pancakes and refill coffee. I live in a 1-bedroom dump. You've made a mistake. His gaze softened, but it didn't waver. No mistake. Your father knew this day would come. That's why he left you with nothing. To keep you hidden. To keep you small. Tears pricked my eyes, unbidden, hot and angry. You expect me to believe my father was some kind of criminal? I expect you to believe what's in front of your eyes, Adrian said, his voice low, steady. Your father was a man of this world. A man who tried to escape. And now, you his only heir are left with the consequences. My breath came ragged, my grip on the photograph tightening until my knuckles went white. What do you want from me? Adrian studied me for a long moment, then lifted the bracelet from my hand and fastened it around my wrist with surprising gentleness. Not what I want, he said. What you're owed. The metal was cold against my skin, heavier than it should have been. Like a shackle, I wanted to tear it off, to fling it across the room, but something stopped me. Maybe the way his fingers lingered a fraction too long against my pulse. Maybe the flicker of something almost human in his eyes. Or maybe it was the gnawing, terrible thought that he was telling the truth. Adrian stepped back, his voice turning businesslike. You'll have choices soon, but first to listen. You'll learn. You'll decide whether to claim your name, or abandon it forever. And if I abandon it, my voice was barely a whisper. He smiled faintly, though there was no warmth in it. Then you'll find that walking away is not so easy. Your father tried. He failed. You may not be given the same grace. The words settled heavy in the room, heavier than the silence that followed. And in that silence, I realized something terrifying. I hadn't just walked into Adrian Moretti's house. I had walked into my father's shadow. The solarium was made of glass and iron, a cathedral of sunlight that poured in from every direction. Even in November, even with clouds still clinging after the storm, the space glowed. Plants thrived here, lush and tropical, a secret jungle in the middle of Chicago. At the far end, a table had been set, white linen, crystal glasses, a single chair waiting across from Adrian Morty. I hesitated in the doorway, my steps faltering. The floor gleamed like polished stone beneath my borrowed shoes. My own reflection looked back at me, small and trembling. Emily, Adrian said, rising from his chair with old-world courtesy. Come, sit. Every instinct screamed at me to turn, to run, to slam myself against the locked doors until they gave way. But his eyes held mine, steady, unblinking, pulling me forward like a tide I couldn't fight. I sat. A server appeared as if conjured, setting down plates I hadn't seen carried in. Salmon, delicate greens, food that looked like art compared to the greasy plates at the diner where I worked. I didn't touch it. Adrian cut his food with precise movements, Like every gesture was deliberate. You must be hungry. I'm not. My voice was sharper than I intended. Fear spoils the appetite, he said calmly. But eventually, hunger wins. I gripped the edge of the table. Tell me why I'm here. His gaze flicked to the bracelet on my wrist, then back to my face. Because you are not Emily Carter, waitress. You are Emily Carter, heir. I don't want to be anyone's heir, I snapped. I want my life back. Which life? His tone sharpened, just enough to cut. It's the one where you work to shifts and collapse on your couch. The one where your neighbors don't know your name. The one where pneumonia nearly killed you in the street. Heat rose in my cheeks. At least, it was mine. He leaned back, studying me. And what if you don't have the luxury of choice? I froze. There are men, he continued, his voice low, measured. Who would give anything to know what I already know, that James Carter's bloodline didn't end with him? That his daughter walks this city. That she carries his name, his legacy, his debts. The words fell like stones. Rival families, I whispered. Adrian inclined his head slightly, an acknowledgement without detail. If they discover you unprotected, they will not offer you silk sheets and medicine. They will use you, break you, or bury you. My hands trembled in my lap. You're lying, I said, but the conviction wasn't there. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were photographs, grainy surveillance shots. Me leaving the diner. Me waiting at the bus stop. Me unlocking the door to my apartment. My breath caught. They already look for you, Adrian said softly. And they do not play gently. I shoved the folder back toward him. Why show me this? To scare me. To give you clarity, he replied. You have two paths. His eyes locked on mine. Claim your inheritance. Train under me. Take your rightful place where your father abandoned his. With my protection, you will live. More than live, you will wield power. The words coiled around me, heavy, seductive, terrifying. And the other path? I forced out. You renounce it, publicly, formally, transfer all rights, all claims, to me. I will absorb what remains of the Carter holdings. In exchange, I'll give you a new identity, a new life, far from Chicago. You'll be safe, comfortable, forgotten, exile. The word tasted like ash. And if I choose neither? I asked, though I already feared the answer. Adrian's gaze didn't waver. Then you leave here unprotected, with every family in this city knowing your name. 3 days. That is how long you would survive. Silence crashed over the table. I wanted to scream at him, call him a liar, accuse him of inventing this entire nightmare. But the photographs in that folder had been real. The bracelet on my wrist was real. The way he spoke, calm, certain, merciless, was real. My chest ached. Why me? Why do you care? For the first time, his expression flickered, something almost human flashing in his eyes. Because blood binds us all, Emily, he said softly. Your father was my brother in every way but blood. And when he left, he took something I could never forgive you. The air left my lungs. Me. Adrian's gaze darkened. You were never meant to be invisible. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The bracelet felt heavier than ever, the sapphires biting into my skin like chains. I wanted to rip it off. But when I looked up, Adrian was still watching me, patient, certain, as if he already knew which path I would choose. It wasn't until the next morning that I realized something was wrong. Not wrong in the way everything here was wrong: the locked doors, the staff who never met my eyes, the bracelet I couldn't stop touching. This was different. The moment I woke, I noticed the books stacked neatly on a shelf. My books, bent paperbacks I'd bought secondhand, their spines cracked, their pages stained with coffee. I sat up sharply, my chest tightening. I scanned the room. On the dresser, my grandmother's quilt, faded and frayed, folded perfectly. On the desk, my chipped mug with the faded diner logo. In the corner, the duffel bag I'd shoved under my bed back in Westfield, unzipped and emptied of clothes. They had gone into my apartment. I threw off the blankets and stumbled to the bag, heart hammering. Inside, everything was there. My wallet, my cheap phone, the little keychain with pepper spray attached. Nothing missing. Which somehow made it worse. They hadn't stolen anything. They had taken everything. The door opened before I could process it. Mrs. Langston entered, her expression as calm and composed as ever. "I see you've noticed," she said, glancing at the books, the quilt, the mug. "Mr. Moretti thought you might be more comfortable with familiar surroundings. Comfortable." My voice cracked. "You broke into my apartment. You went through my things. That's not comfort, that's invasion." Her eyes softened, just a fraction. "You won't need to return there. Your lease has already been handled." "Handled," I repeated, bile rising in my throat. "You mean paid off? Cancelled? You had no right." "You'll understand in time," she murmured. I wanted to scream, to rip every book off the shelf, to throw the quilt into the fire just to prove this place couldn't swallow who I was. But my body betrayed me again, weak, exhausted, hollow from too many emotions. Mrs. Langston set a tray down on the table. "Toast, tea, honey." My stomach growled even as I glared at her. "Eat," she said simply. "You'll need strength." "For what?" I demanded. Her silence was answer enough. When she left, I paced the room like a caged animal. My own things looked alien here, as if they had been stolen not from my apartment but from my life. Nothing belonged anymore, not the silk walls, not the chipped mug, not even me. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass of the window. The gardens stretched below, manicured and endless, with tall walls at their borders. Beyond, the faint glitter of the Chicago River. Somewhere out there, the world kept moving. Diners opened. Buses rumbled. People complained about the rain and never knew how lucky they were to be free in it. A sound pulled me back, a low murmur, voices in the hallway outside my door. I held my breath, listening. "I already know she's here." The words sent ice down my spine. Families are restless. If they confirm she's alive, Moretti won't let them near. Not while she's under his roof. Silence, then footsteps fading. My pulse thundered in my ears. They were talking about me. Rival families. The danger Adrian had warned me about wasn't distant, it was already circling. I sat back on the bed, clutching the bracelet as if it could anchor me. That's when the door opened again. This time, it wasn't Mrs. Langston. Adrian. He stepped inside, his suit as immaculate as yesterday's, his eyes sharper, darker. He looked at me, at my books, my quilt, the mug on the desk. "You brought my things here," I said before he could speak. My voice trembled with fury. "I did," he admitted. "I want you to feel at home." "This isn't home." He studied me, unbothered by the venom in my tone. "It will be. In time. You don't get to decide that." His gaze locked on mine, steady, unyielding. "Emily, everything that touches your life is already in motion. Whether you accept it or not, the families know who you are. They're watching, waiting. And if you step outside these walls unprotected, you will not survive." The words echoed the whispers I'd overheard, and dread spread cold and heavy through my chest. My hands trembled as I clutched the bracelet tighter. "So that's it. I'm trapped here, until I become what you want me to be." Adrian's expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened. "Not what I want. What you were born to be." The room seemed smaller, the walls closing in, the bracelet burning against my skin. And for the first time, I realized he wasn't exaggerating. The world outside already knew my name. The bracelet burned against my skin as though it had a pulse of its own. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to breathe, but the walls pressed closer, the silence too heavy. Outside, the gardens lay still, soaked from the storm. And yet I felt eyes on me, everywhere. The door creaked open without a knock. Adrian Moretti filled the doorway. He didn't need to speak. His presence was enough to change the air in the room. He glanced at the books neatly arranged, the quilt folded on the bed, the duffel bag emptied in the corner. His eyes returned to me. "You hate that I brought them here," he said quietly. I swallowed. "They're mine. They don't belong here. None of this belongs here." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a muted click. "And yet, here they are. Here you are." My breath caught, sharp and angry. "I didn't choose this, didn't you?" His tone wasn't mocking, just maddeningly calm. "You stepped into my car. You walked through my door. You didn't fight when the gates closed." I was freezing. I was sick. I thought I was dying out there. His gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. "And if I hadn't stopped, you might have been." The fire inside me sputtered, because the truth sat heavy between us. Part of me had been grateful when that door opened, when warmth replaced the storm. I shook my head violently. "You don't get to twist this. You made me a prisoner." Adrian walked closer. He didn't move like other men, no. Wasted steps. No hesitation. He lowered himself into the chair across from me, elbows resting lightly on his knees, eyes locked on mine. "Do you feel like a prisoner, Emily?" His voice was low, coaxing. "Yes," I shot back instantly, though my heart pounded with uncertainty. His mouth curved, not quite a smile. "And yet, no chains. No bars. You walk these halls. You eat at my table. You sleep in silk. Is that prison? Or protection?" The question hung between us like a blade. My throat tightened. "Why does it matter to you?" He leaned back, studying me as though I were a puzzle only he could solve. "Because your father mattered to me. Because you matter." I laughed, sharp and bitter, though the sound cracked in my chest. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said softly. Silent stretched, heavy with unspoken truths. My pulse raced. His eyes didn't waver, dark and steady, pulling me in like a current I couldn't resist. And then, without warning, he reached forward. His fingers brushed against my wrist, just above the bracelet. The contact was electric, fire shooting up my arm. I pulled back, breath catching. "Don't." But the damage was done. The spark lingered, hot and dangerous, as though some part of me had betrayed the rest. "I don't want to be here," I whispered, though the words rang hollow even to my own ears. "You don't want to admit you belong here," he corrected. Before I could reply, a sound shattered the air. A sharp crack, glass breaking. Then another louder, closer. Adrian's expression hardened instantly. He rose in one fluid motion, his calm replaced by lethal focus. "Stay here," he ordered. My chest seized. What's happening? Another sound, this time unmistakable. Gunfire. The walls shook faintly, a chandelier rattling overhead. Somewhere down the hall, voices barked commands. Heavy footsteps thundered against marble. Adrian was already at the door when Dmitri appeared, a pistol in his hand, his expression carved from stone. "East wing breach," Dmitri said, his accent thick, clipped. "Two vehicles at the gate. They're armed." My blood turned to ice. Armed. Vehicles. Breach. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Get her below." Dimitri's eyes flicked to me, unreadable now. "No." I stumbled to my feet, panic clawing at my throat. "What's happening?" "Whew, families." Adrian cut me off, his voice sharp, merciless. "They've come for you." My knees nearly buckled. "For me? Move." Dmitri barked, crossing the room in 2 strides. His hand clamped around my arm, not cruel but unyielding. Adrian's gaze locked on mine, dark and burning. "Do not fight him. Do not run. You'll live, if you listen." Then he was gone, disappearing down the hall toward the gunfire. Dmitri dragged me from the room, his grip iron around my arm. The mansion that had felt too quiet before now roared with chaos, boots pounding, shouts echoing, the distant crack of gunfire ricocheting off stone walls. "Where are we going?" I demanded, my voice shrill. "Safe room," Dmitri muttered. "Basement." I stumbled down the hallway, nearly tripping over the long silk hem of the borrowed dress I wore. My heart slammed against my ribs, each beat louder than the last. As we turned a corner, I glimpsed them through a tall window, figures in black, vaulting the outer wall, weapons glinting in the dim light. My stomach lurched. They weren't after Adrian. They weren't after his empire. They were after me. Dimitri shoved me down a staircase, each step echoing like thunder. The air grew colder, damper, the walls narrowing. We reached a steel door at the end of the corridor. Dimitri keyed in a code, the lock clicking open. He pushed me inside. The room was stark, bare walls, a cot, shelves stacked with supplies. No windows, only silence. "Stay," Dimitri ordered, already turning back toward the chaos. "Wait," my voice cracked. "What about Adrian?" Dimitri paused, his hand on the door. His expression didn't soften, but his eyes held something I couldn't name. "If he falls," Dimitri said quietly, "none of this will matter." The door slammed shut, the lock engaged with a finality that stole my breath. Alone, trembling, I sank onto the cot, clutching the bracelet on my wrist. The sounds above: gunfire, shouting, the crash of breaking glass echoed faintly through the floor. Each one a reminder that my world was no longer mine. Adrian had warned me. The families wouldn't wait. And now they were here. The silence was the worst part. It wasn't real silence, not exactly. The room hummed faintly with air circulation, and above me, distant thuds rattled the ceiling like angry fists pounding on a coffin lid. But compared to the chaos I'd just been dragged through, the shouts, the gunfire, the breaking glass, this basement felt like the grave itself. I curled against the cot, arms wrapped around my knees, every muscle in my body strung so tight I thought I'd snap. My throat burned with the need to scream, but my voice stayed trapped inside me. I tried to focus on the bracelet. The sapphires glinted faintly in the dim light, the engraving Carter catching every flicker. It looked delicate, fragile, like something that should have belonged to a grandmother, or been tucked away in a museum. But it weighed on me like iron. I twisted it, over and over, as if I could unwind the truth from its cold metal. The voices outside grew sharper, closer. I heard the bark of orders in a language I didn't recognize. Russian, maybe, or something harsher, filled with consonants and rage. Then gunfire again, louder. I flinched so hard I toppled from the cot, the concrete floor slamming into my knees. I pressed my palms to my ears, heart slamming, but the sounds still came one after another, sharp cracks, then silence, then more. Minutes passed, or hours. Time lost meaning. I thought of my old apartment, the chipped paint on the bathroom mirror, the radiator that hissed like it was alive, the way the walls smelled faintly of mildew every time it rained. That place had been hell, but it had been mine. And here I was, in a cage lined with steel, waiting for a stranger to decide if I lived or died. "This is your father's fault." The thought came bitter, uninvited. He left, he ran, and now you're the one hunted for debts you never made. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them fall. If the walls had cameras, and I knew, deep down, they did, I wouldn't give Adrian the satisfaction of seeing me break. Then silence. Not the muffled chaos I'd grown used to. Not the pounding footsteps overhead. Just stillness. My chest tightened. Silence could mean victory, or it could mean death. The lock turned. I scrambled back, heart hammering. The steel door swung open. Adrian stood there, framed in the doorway. His white shirt was ruined, streaked with blood, some not. I couldn't tell. His suit jacket was gone, his tie discarded. His face was cut along the cheekbone, the skin raw and red, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. He stepped inside and shut the door behind him. The air shifted instantly. "You're alive," I whispered, hating the way relief flooded me. His mouth curved faintly. "Did you doubt?" My voice cracked. "They were here for me, weren't they?" His silence was answer enough. I gripped the edge of the cot so hard my knuckles whitened. Why? Why me? Why risk this for me? Adrian crouched, his bloodied hands resting loosely on his knees, his gaze level with mine. Even battered, even brutal, he radiated control. Because your name is not Carter. It is Carter. And names in our world are more dangerous than bullets. I shook my head violently. That doesn't explain why they want me dead. They don't want you dead, Adrian said softly, and somehow that was worse. They want to own you. To claim what you represent. To make you a pawn. I'm not, you are, he cut in, his voice sharp. Whether you accept it or not, blood does not ask. Blood commands. The bracelet glinted between us. He reached out, brushing it with one finger, smearing it with a streak of crimson. Your father tried to erase this. He ran. He thought he could cut himself free. But old debts do not disappear, Emily. They collect interest. My throat closed. What debts? What did he do? Adrian's jaw tightened. For the first time, I saw hesitation flicker in his eyes. He stole something. What? Adrian's gaze darkened, unreadable. That is not for tonight. I wanted to scream. To shake him until the truth spilled out. But I couldn't tear my eyes from him, his bloodied shirt, his raw hands, the faint scar above his brow. He looked like a man who had just killed for me. A man who would do it again. Fear tangled with something else. Something hotter, more dangerous. I hated myself for feeling it. Adrian rose slowly, his shadow stretching across the room. Rest, Emily. Tomorrow I'll tell you more. He moved toward the door. Wait. My voice was barely audible. What if I don't want to know? He paused, his hand on the handle. He didn't look back when he spoke. Then, ignorance will bury you faster than any bullet. The door clicked shut, and for the first time I understood. The storm outside the mansion hadn't ended. It had only just begun. I didn't sleep that night. Even after the sounds of battle faded, after the shouts and gunfire became ghosts in the stone walls, I lay awake on the cot, staring at the ceiling of the safe room. The silence was worse than the chaos. It let the questions in. By morning, when the steel door opened, my body was stiff, my mind raw. Dmitri stood there, his expression unreadable, a bruise swelling beneath his eye. He said nothing, only gestured for me to follow. My legs felt like lead as I climbed the stairs. The mansion bore scars, shattered glass, bullet holes etched into plaster, the smell of gunpowder woven into the air. Staff moved silently through the wreckage, cleaning as if war was routine. Dmitri led me back to the solarium. Sunlight poured through the glass ceiling, golden and merciless. The same table from before waited, but this time only a single chair stood opposite Adrian. He was already there. A dark suit, crisp and immaculate, as though the blood of last night had never touched him. Only the cut along his cheekbone remained, stitched neatly now, a reminder that he had fought and survived. Sit, he said, his voice calm, but absolute. I obeyed, though every muscle screamed against it. For a long moment, he said nothing. He poured wine into a crystal glass, the sound sharp in the silence. Then he slid it toward me. I didn't touch it. You think I'm your captor? He said finally, his eyes fixed on mine. But the truth is simpler. I'm the only barrier between you and the people who would carve you apart for what your name means. My throat tightened. Then let me leave. Give me back my life. You have no life to go back to. His tone cut like steel. Your apartment is emptied. Your job's already filled. The families know your name. Do you think you can vanish into waitressing shifts and bus rides now? Anger flared hot in my chest. That wasn't your decision to make. No, he conceded, leaning back. It was your father's, years ago, when he ran. And it was mine, the night I pulled you from the rain. What remains is yours. My choice. His eyes darkened. Your fate. The words lodged in my chest like a stone. You can renounce the name Carter. I'll arrange for you to disappear, new city, new papers, a bank account that would make you comfortable until you die. You'll live, Emily. Quietly, alone, always looking over your shoulder. I closed my eyes. The picture of exile formed a clear Leona, their small apartment, another radiator hissing, another job where I smiled for tips, only this time with shadows at every corner, wondering if they had found me. And the other option? I asked, my voice small. Adrian's gaze sharpened. You stay. You learn, you claim what is yours. You take your place by my side, and the families will bow before your name instead of hunting it. The room tilted. My pulse thundered in my ears. You men become like you, I whispered. His lips curved faintly. No, become more than me. I shook my head violently. I don't want power. I don't want any of this. Don't you? His voice was low, dangerous. Don't you want to stop struggling? To never again count pennies for rent? To never again walk home in the rain, invisible, forgotten? My chest rose and fell in ragged bursts. Because yes, God help me, yes. Part of me wanted that. Adrian rose slowly, walking around the table until he stood behind me. I stiffened as his hand brushed my shoulder, light but searing. You fear me, he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. But you also know, his fingers traced down my arm, stopping just above the bracelet. That no one has ever seen you the way I do. I shivered, caught between wanting to recoil and wanting to lean back into his touch. Adrian? My voice was barely a whisper. He leaned closer, his lips near my temple. Say the word, and I'll erase it all. You'll wake tomorrow on a flight to another life. No bracelet, no name, no chains. I turned, my face inches from his. His eyes burned, dark and endless, drawing me in. And if I stay? I asked. His mouth curved into the faintest smile. Then you become fire. The space between us pulsed. My body leaned forward before my mind could stop it, my lips parting with the breath I couldn't catch. His hand tilted my chin, slow, deliberate. The world narrowed to the brush of his thumb against my skin, the nearness of his mouth, the electricity sparking in the air between us, and then he pulled back. The loss was a wound. You're not ready, he said softly, though his eyes betrayed a storm. When you decide, it must be with certainty, because once you choose, there is no return. He stepped away, leaving me trembling in the chair, my skin still burning from where he'd touched me. For the first time, I understood what terrified me most. It wasn't the families outside. It wasn't the debts my father had left. It was the possibility that I might choose Adrian not out of fear, but out of something far more dangerous. The mansion didn't tremble this time, it roared. The night split open with the staccato of machine guns, the windows rattling in their frames as if the house itself feared collapse. I woke with my heart in my throat, the bracelet heavy on my wrist, the taste of smoke already in the air. Then came the voices, shouts in the hall, Dimitri's barked orders, the unmistakable crack of bullets tearing through marble. I stumbled from bed as the door burst open. Dimitri stormed inside, his pistol drawn, his face grim. They're here, he snapped. The whole east wing breached. My blood froze. Again. Not again, he said, yanking me by the arm. This is war. The hallway outside was chaos. Men in black suits moved with brutal precision, returning fire as shadows surged through shattered windows. The sharp smell of gunpowder burned my throat. Somewhere deeper in the house, flames licked at the curtains, crackling like laughter. Adrian's house, the fortress I thought untouchable, was bleeding. Dimitri dragged me toward the staircase, but my body refused. My legs locked, my voice cracked as I shouted over the gunfire. Where is he? Dimitri didn't answer. Where is Adrian? I screamed. As if summoned, a figure emerged from the smoke at the far end of the hall. He looked carved from the chaos, shirt, torn blood streaked across his side, pistol in hand. His presence was a gravity all its own, pulling me toward him even as the world shattered around us. Emily, My name in his mouth was a command, a plea, a promise. He fired twice without breaking stride, 2 men collapsing before they could lift their weapons. When he reached me, his hand gripped my arm with fire. "You should be below," he snarled, eyes flashing. "I won't hide," I shot back, my voice trembling but clear. "Not anymore. This isn't your fight." "It's already mine," I said. "Because I choose it. Because I choose you." For a second, the storm in his eyes broke. His breath caught, his jaw clenched, and in that flicker of silence, the truth burned hotter than the flames. He cared. He cared enough to bleed, to fight, to rage for me. Then the corridor exploded. A grenade clattered across the marble. Adrian cursed, shoving me hard into Dimitri's chest as the blast tore the world apart. Heat seared my skin, glass rained down like knives, and the hallway filled with fire. I screamed his name, but the smoke swallowed him whole. Dimitri's arms pinned me, dragging me toward the stairwell. He ordered me no. I fought with everything in me. I won't leave him. Through the haze, I saw him. Adrian, rising from the rubble, blood dripping from a fresh gash along his temple. He staggered, then straightened, his gun raised, his will unbroken. I tore free from Dimitri and ran to him. Bullets went past, one shattering a mirror, another sparking off the stone near my feet. I didn't care. My body moved before fear could catch me. When I reached him, my hands found his face, warm with blood and fire. "You can't do this alone," I choked. His hand closed over mine, fierce, unyielding. "I was never alone," he said. The words shattered the last wall between us. His mouth crashed into mine, rough and desperate, a kiss born not of romance but survival, of fury, of need. The world burned around us, and still the only thing I felt was him, his breath, his grip, his fire. When he tore away, his forehead pressed to mine, his voice was ragged. "Now you're mine. In life or in death." Before I could answer, Dimitri's shout cut through the smoke. "They're falling back." Gunfire sputtered, then faded. The last masked figure retreated into the night, leaving silence and ruin in their wake. The east wing was destroyed. The air reeked of blood and ash. The mansion groaned as if mourning its wounds, and Adrian swayed where he stood. My arms shot out, catching him as his knees buckled. His weight dragged me down, but I refused to let him fall. His blood soaked into my borrowed clothes, hot and endless. "Adrian," I begged, my voice breaking. "Stay with me." His eyes found mine through the haze, dark and heavy. His hand lifted weakly, brushing the bracelet on my wrist. "You chose." His voice was barely a whisper. "Remember that?" Then his eyes fluttered shut. I screamed his name, clutching him as Dimitri rushed forward, shouting for medics, for stretchers, for anything. The mansion swarmed with his men, voices urgent, feet pounding. But I only heard my heartbeat, frantic and breaking, as I held Adrian against me. I had chosen him. And now I had to fight to keep him alive. The smoke lingered long after the last gunshot faded. It clung to the walls, settled into the curtains, burned my lungs with every breath. The mansion was scarred bullet holes in marble, shattered chandeliers littering the floor. Flames still hissing as staff hurried with buckets and extinguishers. But none of it mattered. All I saw was Adrian, pale and heavy in my arms, his blood staining my hands. "Stay with me," I whispered, rocking him against me as chaos whirled around us. "Don't you dare leave me now." Dimitri knelt beside us, pressing a cloth to Adrian's side. His face, always so unreadable, tightened with something like desperation. "He needs the doctor. Now." The medics came, voices sharp, hands quick. They lifted Adrian onto a stretcher, but his fingers clung to mine, refusing to let go. I stumbled alongside, unwilling to break the fragile thread between us. They carried him to a room I hadn't seen before: stone walls, a long oak table now converted into an operating surface. The doctor muttered orders, pulling supplies from leather cases, working with brutal efficiency. I stayed at Adrian's side, my hand locked in his, my heart in my throat. "Emily," Dimitri said behind me, his voice firm. "You should leave. This will not be, I'm not leaving him." My voice was steel. For once, Dimitri didn't argue. Hours blurred into minutes, or minutes into hours. I couldn't tell. I only knew the sound of Adrian's breathing, shallow but steady, and the warmth of his hand in mine. When the doctor finally straightened, sweat on his brow, he muttered, "He'll live. He's too stubborn not to." Relief crashed over me so hard my knees nearly buckled. The room emptied, leaving just us. I sat by the bed where they'd laid him, brushing damp hair back from his forehead. In sleep, he looked younger, less untouchable. The sharp lines of power and control softened, revealing the man beneath the armor. I leaned closer, whispering into the silence. "You terrify me, Adrian Morty, and God help me, I think I love you for it." His eyes opened, I gasped, caught. "You shouldn't," he rasped, his voice rough but alive. "Love me." "Too late," I said, tears spilling down my cheeks. "You can't tell me what to feel." His lips curved, faint but real. "Stubborn. Like your father." I shook my head fiercely. "Don't compare me to him." He ran. "I'm staying." Something shifted in his gaze then, something that wasn't power or control, but gratitude, wonder, maybe even fear. "You'd bind yourself to me," he whispered. "To this life? Knowing the danger. Knowing what it costs." "Yes," I said, steady. "Because it's not the name I'm choosing. Not Carter, not the legacy. I'm choosing you." For once, Adrian had no answer. His hand rose, trembling, and cupped my cheek. His thumb brushed away my tears. "I've killed for you," he murmured. "I'd burn this city for you. But this?" His eyes locked on mine, dark and endless. "This is the first time I've lived for someone." The breath caught in my throat. My heart slammed, not from fear, but from the truth in his words. I leaned down, and this time the kiss wasn't desperate or fierce. It was slow, tender, the kind that healed instead of burned. His lips tasted of salt and smoke, but beneath it was something pure, something mine. When we parted, his forehead rested against mine. "Stay," he whispered. "I will," I promised. Not because of the Carter name, not because of my father, because of us. Outside, dawn broke. Pale light spilled through shattered windows, illuminating ruins that somehow looked less like loss and more like survival. The house still stood. We still stood. And for the first time, I felt not trapped, not hunted, but free. Because I had chosen. Not invisibility, not exile, not fear, love. Adrian's hand found mine, our fingers intertwining, stronger than blood, stronger than legacy, stronger than the storm. And in that dawn, among ashes and silence, I knew. Whatever battles waited, whatever secrets remained, we would face them together. Not as prisoner and captor, not as heir and protector, but as two souls who had found each other in the fire and refused to let go. And that's the end of part 1 of this story. If you enjoyed it, please support me by leaving a like. And if you want to hear part 2, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Tell me from which corner of the world you're listening. I love it when you interact in the comments. Thank you for spending your time with us. God bless you, and see you soon.